Welcome to Laurier's Teaching Excellence Conversation Series. I'm Deborah Van Eyneton, Academic Director of Teaching Excellence and Innovation at Wilfrid Laurier University. And today I'm with Elaine Cheng from Laurier's Archaeology and Heritage Studies program, who received the 2024 Early Career Excellence Award. Elaine has quickly established herself as a dedicated educator since joining Laurier 4 years ago. Her innovative course design and instructional strategies are hallmarked by active, applied, and experiential learning principles that deeply engage students and enhance their entire educational experience. Elaine connects students with real-world professionals and creates exciting field experiences for students, even while teaching virtually, and I'm excited to talk to her today. So archaeology, the study of archaeology is different in that you've got your in-class, your theory, your conceptual components, but you're also very much learning outside the classroom. And so you said a field director. What's the position of, what does a field director do?
So field directors are the individuals that's in charge of a crew. A crew can be
On a site, on a dig somewhere.
On an
That's great.
excavation
Yeah.
site. And they are in charge of training the students when they first get into the field, as well as kind of the everyday excavations, managing and planning where the next unit might be, in contact with the the project managers that's in charge of the project. So it's a very, very dynamic and team-oriented profession, and because of that, you end up with a lot of individuals that you meet that can potentially show you something cool about archaeology, or something inspiring that can really guide you in certain directions.
And where were those early field experiences for you?
Well, my early experiences were mostly in Southern Ontario, actually. I dug throughout Toronto and actually Waterloo area, Hamilton. It was with the crew, and 407 project further in the east as well. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
when they were expanding to
Right.
Peterborough.
Yeah.
So a lot of that kind of, you got to work with these individuals who's worked for 20, 30 years in the field. They have all these field experience, and you get to work with Indigenous monitors who, they have the knowledge, the other side of that, where can also encourage us and teach us as well as we're excavating and learning.
To have a broad perspective and make sure that
Definitely.
you're seeing things through different eyes. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because the worst you can do is and I tell my students that when we're in the classroom, is the worst you can do is have one theory and one hypothesis that you want to focus on and start excavating, and then forget about everything else on the
Right.
field. So
Right.
the data is skewed, right? Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of one of the things that I find is fascinating about archaeology.
So one of the things that's very, very clear in your dossier is that, you love taking your students out in the field, right? You like ensuring that they've got that kind of experience. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing with the students, either here or elsewhere in terms
Yeah.
of getting them out of the classroom?
Yeah, actually, so one of the things I do for just in classes like landscape archaeology in general is to take them to, or above ground archaeology as well, is to take them outside of the class, outside of just to see kind of the old downtown, right? What kind of structures are we talking about? Because above ground archaeology, oftentimes students forget that, we're not just looking at the ground. There's structures there for 100 years, and that structure itself
Right.
can tell us about the site as well. It may not be as old as what we might be digging, or it might be the same time. But what does that tell us? What potential do we have when we start excavating? Because archaeology is a practice, unfortunately, that's destructive. So you want to have a very good idea of what's happening.
Before you dig. That
Exactly.
reminds me, call before you dig.
That kind of concept is something that is good to give the students, to get them to start thinking about that. And that's something that, you know, textbooks and being in the classroom doesn't really, can't really bridge that sometimes, right? Seeing a building and looking at that design and being like, oh, this looks like a certain time period because it's, you know, Victorian style, is so much more fun and interesting. And you see a lot more light bulbs going off, right? The
I was just going
students
to ask,
being
how
like,
do the
yeah,
students respond?
yeah, you see a lot of students being like, oh, okay, so this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it, right? It's not
This
just,
is what archaeology
yeah,
is.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
This is what, because, you know, you don't always end up in archaeology. There's a lot of professions out there that archaeologists go into. We have, you know, the archaeology that I've discussed so far, but there's individuals that go into built heritage, and their
Right.
job is to look at structures.
Right.
Individuals go into public planning or civil planning as well, and they have to understand the structure and how heritage sites in various different types work together on the landscape, right? And how to kind of protect them and how it can progress for the future generation. So that's kind of why I try to take them to end. During COVID, I had the opportunity for the students to go to Ashbridges Estate in downtown Toronto.
Right.
What was interesting about that was archaeology, we don't often find sites. Archaeologists aren't always the individuals who find sites, and because some of these findings are accidental.
Yeah,
right?
so somebody digging somewhere notices something,
Yeah,
right?
and this project was actually for Built Heritage project to maintain and look at how to preserve the foundation, the stone foundation. And what they ended up finding was the first original structure on the site, which people have been looking for years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so because we found something so unique, I thought, and a lot of the students didn't have any opportunity to actually, you know, start
Because of
digging
the pandemic.
Yeah, because of the
So how did you
pandemic.
do that then? So bringing them in contact with people from that,
Yeah,
from the heritage.
so I was a field director at the time, and because this site was just absolutely fascinating, I spoke to the Dina Doroshenko, the Ontario Heritage Trust archaeologist, and to see if we can bring the students on the project, because, you know, it's always interesting to find something, but to actually also see the connection of that with the site, with the building, with what's happening, what might be happening later on, and what it tells us to the connection to Toronto. Like, all of that is just, you know, it's mind-blowing to me. I mean, I've done, you know, I've been in archaeology for a while, but still, this is still amazing and fun. So I spoke to them. I spoke to the chair, just to make sure that, you know, it's okay, and whether or not the students are comfortable as well, because it is during pandemic. You know, everybody had things that they're
Their
dealing with.
own level of comfort with certain activities. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So we try to make sure we're always outside. There's you know, when we are in a room, the windows, doors are open, things like that, to make sure that they feel comfortable. But we also want to make sure that they're able to talk to specialists who's already there doing their work, right? Because, I mean, what other chances are, it's a great opportunity for them to actually, see where their career might take them, but also to make informed decisions, right? I feel like I can't, I have to be honest with the students. I have to make sure that they're informed, and they have the information that they need to continue.
To think about sort of what comes after.
Yes.
Right? So
Yes.
how do they forge a pathway?
Yeah.
For sure. But what you were saying about your, you know, having the students make the connections, bringing them onto an active excavation site, And I just want to note here, so you're acting as field director for that, in addition to being the course
instructor.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's what a perfect bridge, right? The
Yeah.
blending of the, you know, the actual applied um, work and then your conceptual theoretical work as well. That is what you described is the perfect example of experiential learning, right? So the direct link to the workplace, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those type of ways that you can, like I said, light bulbs, right? And
Yeah,
that
yeah,
interest and you know, maybe hopefully I'll see them in the field or in the heritage sector someday, and you know that these are potentially our future archaeologists, future curators in museums, future, you know, government ministry of you
yes,
know, so
yep. And you have a lot of career integrated elements in your classes, and that really stands out in your dossier. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because, you know, it's in every course you have sort of a clear pathway through that links to what students might be doing afterward.
actually that came from being just wanting to make sure that they're well informed,
Yeah.
right? Because it's one thing to give them a list of jobs that they can find out there
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say like these are potential jobs. But one of the other thing is where to find them.
Yeah.
What do I need to get these? And so one of the assignments I have is to look for jobs that they might be interested in real, you know, job on the job market, and assess what they have, what skills they have that fits this, and what skills they have that they need to improve upon, right? Once they start thinking about that, they can, you know, they have access to internet. They can start looking up to
Yeah.
see, you know, do they need a master's degree? Where, what kind of master's degree do they need? Do they need an MSc? Do they need an MA? Or do they not need a master's degree at all, right? So for that, I think to prepare them early is the best way, because it always, you know, once students get to the fourth year, they're worried about their courses, their exams, and then it's
And
almost
then suddenly,
exactly
yeah, it's upon them. Yeah.
exactly, and
Yeah.
then it's a big now what, right? What am I going to do with this degree? And to get the students to start thinking about this, like second year, third year, to really, I mean, kind of see what's out there, saves them that extra 2, 3, 4 years after university just to figure out what they can do. That's in hopes of that. But also, you know, what I think is a lot of it is, you know, if I can show them some of the pitfalls that they might run into, then it saves them the time to have to figure it out. Like I said, these are future archaeologists, and hopefully by saving that time, they can figure out some of the bigger problems that we have, right? It's bigger issues in heritage studies, that instead of having to figure out, okay, where do I go from here? They're brilliant. These are brilliant young minds, and if they can apply that to real issues, then you know, then I think I'm doing something right. I hope, you know,
Yeah,
that's
and I think Laurier's competency framework works really well here, right? For the
yes.
12 competencies, and it
Yes.
helps give them a language to say, this is what I did in all of these classes.
Yeah.
This is how I'm preparing for, you know,
Yes.
you're giving them a vision of what are the choices out there and what competencies do I need to sort of get there. So
And if I can, I, you know, try to link them to individuals, because fourth year I have a few students that would email me saying like, hey, I remember looking up this job in third year, and you know, do you know anybody, or where should I? And
yeah.
it was actually really rewarding to hear that, and be like, okay, you know what? If I know the individual, yeah,
Yeah.
by all means, you
I'm
know,
going to link
talk
you
to them.
right up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your course design is quite inclusive for students coming from different backgrounds, right? And some, I imagine, are totally new to the practical side of archaeology, right? So I think we get students coming in, they have an idea about, you know, the Indiana Jones idea of
Yes.
what archaeology
Yes.
is, right, in Ontario, Canada. So they really need to be led by the hand in terms of what archaeology is really about, which you've talked about. How do you build students' comfort in the lab and in the field, right? Because they're probably like, they've never done anything like this before.
Yeah.
Right?
The way that I try to encourage them first in the classroom is there is no stupid questions. You can talk about, Indiana Jones, Laura Craft. If you're passionate about it, great. But where does it lead you from there?
Right.
Right?
What's the link?
Like what's the link? Please don't,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you see that they will say, I'm interested in this, right? This maybe ceramics or something, and give them that space to express themselves, to talk to each other. Because I mean, in archaeology, we work as a team. So you have to work with a lot of different individuals. They're very diverse.
Yes.
Even yeah, within
Yep.
heritage specialists, we have very different ideas of how certain things should be conserved and what should be protected. So in the classroom, that's a great place to start, to kind of start getting to know how to work as a team, how to deal with different personalities and characters. I mean, we all, and
Yeah.
learn from each other.
It's the real workplace.
Yeah,
Right? Yes.
because it's
Yeah.
better to learn it now than when your career is on the line. I try to kind of get that so that they can really get to know each other too. Maybe they'll be working on the same crew someday, and maybe so these are things that will help them, hopefully before they start working.
Well, I mean, the feedback of students, as evidenced in your dossiers, that they really like that aspect of it. They like both the teamwork and, that atmosphere of, this is our community, but also just being out in the field, right? Working in the lab.
Yeah, working in the lab.
One of the things that I think that your course design and your classroom practice also shows, and this is related to what we were just talking about, is universal design for learning practices, right? Because in different ways, you provide students with different pathways through the course, right? In terms of their assignments and learning through in-class activities. So you're doing all kinds of different in-class activities. When did you start doing that, and what kind of cued you on, or was that an aspect of archaeology that you experienced all the way through your studies?
Actually, to be honest, that was actually inspired by the COVID. Strangely enough.
Yeah.
So as I was
online initially?
online teaching.
Okay.
Because
interesting.
I was a TA and lead TA, as you mentioned, when I was in my graduate studies, and I had the opportunity to teach and tutorials and teach people in face to face. And once COVID started, there's that shift online, right? But I felt like there's a shift in the students as well. The students before, the students before were very interested in the theoretical, in kind of the broader concepts. But once COVID hit, I felt like everybody's more interested in what's going to happen to me next, right? And what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
And I felt like what I was doing before wasn't connecting. They're having such a hard time, and I don't blame them. They're having such a hard time to deal with just their everyday situation, that, I understand, right? I get it. So I actually started thinking of ways to expand just the way of teaching to kind of help them see what's out there, right? To help them, instead of being, felt like they're locked and trapped in an apartment, to see where their future can be, because I had to do that during COVID. It was hard for everybody.
Yeah.
Right. So that universal design actually started because of COVID, and it actually continued to kind of work because the students seemed to really like it and learned a lot from it.
So what were you doing then? What were some of the practices in the classroom? And I know you were training the other TAs to do some of these things as well.
Yeah. So a lot of the things that I try to do is, engage in the class materials, but not in the way that we're going to, here's an article, we're going to read about it, find the argument, things like that, but But to connect to real world situations, things like residential school, right? We're reading articles about conservation and heritage and things like that. How does this link to something that is in the news, right? How do we
Right.
bridge that? Because that's essentially what we're going to do.
And that was actually it really hit at that time, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So kind of connecting that and step away from theory is important, but to keep the theory within the discussions, I think help the students kind of really apply that knowledge and kind of think about, okay, so this theory isn't just about people in the past, right? We're actually talking about some of the sites we're digging right now and some of the, well, very hot topic and major issues in things that happened in the past we're still trying to resolve now. That's kind of where a lot of these and a lot of kind of the course work came from, a lot of kind of discussing that. And like I mentioned before, everybody have a different idea of how heritage should be practiced. Bring that out, talk to each other about these specific topics.
I wonder if I can follow up on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
because you have to prepare students to deal with these ethical considerations, right? Like this is very prevalent in the field of archaeology, particularly those students who are working in CRM, right?
Yes.
So how do you do that, right? So obviously discussions about this, but this is very real, right? As you said, you worked in on the 407 expansion, and you said you had an Indigenous facilitator there or coordinator?
Indigenous monitor.
A monitor,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So, how do you prepare students for that, right? Because these are big issues.
Yes, they're definitely big issues. And instead of kind of giving them all these big issues and being like, here's something to figure out, I try to kind of step back and let them think about things like,
Puzzle
okay,
it through.
exactly. I don't want to be the one to give them the answers because they
Yeah.
need to figure that out themselves. But a lot of the times, again, I want to make sure they're informed. So I want to give them an idea of what is happening, what has happened, and potential situations out there, and have them work it through. And sometimes you get some amazing answers that you're kind of like, how come I never thought of that? Right? And seeing that is
Different
just
perspectives.
different perspectives.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, well, I'm hoping that what you're saying now can be applied in the future. And I'm hoping that we can all kind of get an idea from this and continue with dealing with all these factors because the worst that we can do is just bury our heads in the sand and not deal with it and be like, well, we're just researching, so we're not gonna, you can't. That's not possible, and that's not realistic. And so I try to kind of give my students that sense of, okay, I'm inviting a Ministry of Culture specialist, like to come and talk. I'm inviting individuals who descendants or things like that to kind of bridge that gap. Like we talk about amongst ourselves in the classroom, but then we also need specialists out there. And I want to let the students know that it's not just I'm now an archaeologist, therefore I'm an expert. You may be an expert in an area, but we still have to work with all of these people. And meeting some of these people. I invited a civil engineer who deals with city planning as well to come because that's something most students didn't even think would be related to archaeology. But oftentimes these are people you might have to deal with depending on what jobs you end up going into.
Yeah.
So you see their slant, you see their kind of ideas and concepts, and I think it gives them a sense of, okay, this is something bigger than just me. My opinion on heritage is important, but it's not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I where I'm standing, kind of understand this other person when they're talking about kind of their ancestral past and their heritage, because yeah, these are important things that they have to understand, and
Hard things to navigate.
definitely, definitely. And I mean, we're still trying to, a lot of us are still trying to navigate project by project, right?
Right.
And by the individuals you meet, and things like that. So it's something that hopefully you can't prepare them 100%, but get them to start thinking about it, so that it's not something that they start working and they're like, oh no, what is this? So to kind of prepare them, even just to start thinking about it. They don't need to start debating with people and start, arguing about this is how it should be done. But what I was hoping to get them thinking is how to bridge that,
Yeah.
how to go beyond, your own concept, the class's concept, right? And then with other people, individuals.
So you're also an East Asian specialist.
Yes.
So that brings in a whole bunch of other issues about people going abroad and excavating and what happens to whatever you find. And,
Yes.
right? So these are,
Actually,
again, very difficult issues.
yes, and actually, it's actually funny you brought that up, because my original experiences in Southern Ontario gave me kind of this concept of bridging and dealing with different individuals. But when I went to East Asia and to do archaeology, specifically in China, it was a whole different system, right? And it was really
But
challenging.
and that's what governs your activities in that country. So you
Yes,
have to operate under that
yes, definitely.
different umbrella. Yeah.
And by being in that and learning about, okay, so this is a different system. I'm not here to say this is right or wrong, because again, my concept of heritage is a certain ideal. But I need, how do I work
Yeah.
with these people,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, I ended up learning so much from them, and I think they actually got some pretty good ideas for Southern archaeology and what they can do, and it was just a wonderful exchange, to kind of really learn from each other.
And do students get a taste of that in archaeology courses at Laurier as
Yes.
well? Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
some of my courses I talk about what archaeology and availabilities are outside of Ontario or outside of North America, because my master's degree was in England, and my PhD I was in East Asia,
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
archaeology, they're all different systems. They're all very different, just method of how things are done. And a lot of these students are interested in going abroad, right? They're not limited to just Southern Ontario. A lot of them were talking to me about, well, I would like to go to England,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So how to prepare them for an international archaeology becomes another facet. And
How do you do that? Because that's sort of, that's the intercultural training, that is, it's hard to do at home,
yes,
right?
yes. And a lot of
But
it,
you want to do some of it before they leave,
oh,
right? Yeah.
oh, for sure, yeah, definitely. And a lot of it too is when we go talk about international, there's cultural variation, like their own, and because of that, um, the best thing I can do is prepare the students for the type of archaeology they do.
Right.
Right? One of the first things I will say is, is it academic? Is archaeology mostly, excavation and preservation done by academics, by university, by research, or is it government? Right? Just that in itself makes a big difference. Or is it CRM, right? Private sector. Now, these three different sectors can have very different, goals and to start, but also,
Right.
how do you navigate that? To let them know that, okay, if you're interested in a master's degree, where do you find the artifacts? Your supervisor will help, but, have an idea of what's out there. Who is doing these excavations? If you're interested in CRM, well, and outside of Ontario, outside of Canada, what kind of agencies do you need to look at to work as an archaeologist, right? They may not have CRM company.
Yeah.
And because of that, you might be preparing yourself to work in a CRM environment, and then you go to that country and be like, oh, okay, that was definitely not what I was expecting. And to save them that time and give them, that
Prepare them properly.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, because bridging that and is hard. It can be quite challenging, and it can really, really make a student feel isolating too if they are not familiar with the culture,
Right.
and they have archaeology background, but they realize this is a completely different area of archaeology that they weren't prepared for.
It's
So
interesting that, all the pathways of our conversation lead back to career,
yeah,
right? You're very focused on preparing them for what happens
it would be wonderful to see these students actually
out there.
out there.
I'm sure you know many
right?
who are
There's
employed.
there's a few, actually. There's quite a few from Laurier that's
Yes.
digging in the field, and you see some of the things that they're doing. You're like, oh my goodness, this is great.
This is exactly what I wanted. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're figuring it out, right? Like, you always want the next generation to be better.
We want more for our children, right? For our students. It's kind of the same thing, right? We want them to do even better than we did.
Yeah.
I can't help but think when I look across your courses and all of the extra things, the experiential learning, the applied activities in class, the career integrated learning, all of these things that are layered across all of your courses. How do you keep this up? This is a lot of extra work to not only design a course that trains students in the methods, modes, theories, debate, but also to ensure they get some kind of field exposure, experience, whatever. How is that sustainable for you? Right? That's a lot of work.
It is, and it can be a little overwhelming sometimes. But a lot of times I kind of think to myself, like, what would I have benefited? I had some amazing mentors. However, there's also gaps, right? And I had various mentors from different backgrounds, but there's certain things that you just can't prepare for. And there's certain things that I really hope somebody told me, right? And if I can be that person to give them that information, I think all the best for them. But
yeah,
I think, okay, this might sound cliche or whatnot, but I feel like as an instructor, as an individual that's teaching, it's kind of my responsibility to make sure that they are prepared and they can.
it's not cliche.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
And yes, it sometimes it's a lot of work, and I do kind of try a lot of it too. I try to get the students to be a part of that discussion so that it's their learning experience, not mine. It's not. I'm not just there to tell you, well, this is what you have to learn, but what do you want to learn, right? What can you learn that I can help you with? If you can succeed and learn what you need, all the best for it, right? So yeah.
So well, then what's next for you in terms of your teaching?
Well,
right? So what are the when you look back and you think, okay, what would I have benefited from? What else can I integrate into my courses? What's next for you?
Well, one of the things is I'm planning a field school for spring so that I can officially take students for, instead of the 1 week during COVID, for the 5 weeks, so they can have a full experience.
Where will the field experience be?
Well, it's probably going to be in like GTA area.
Yeah,
but
great.
Yeah, so that they can gain experience, and in a way they can have kind of that just not just the field experience, but if we can see if there's a CRM company digging around, we'll go for a visit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We'll go visit the different conservation areas, things like that. That's the ultimate of going beyond the classroom. That would be wonderful, and it just, I mean, I learned as I was taking them out for the 1 week that
you love it.
Yes, I love it.
I can tell you love it. You're so excited about it.
It was just so much fun, and to kind of help them and to see that, okay, this this is working, and or okay, this is kind of, I thought I explained it, I thought they understood, but there's something I need to change here,
Yeah.
right? There's always improvement, and it's
Yeah.
always a
Yeah.
different group, right? And so that's definitely one direction that I'm really looking forward to.
And would that be field school for more senior students? Probably with a little bit more behind them.
Probably
Yeah.
with, yeah. I mean, there's nothing more rewarding than finding a piece of history and then kind of realize that, hey, this isn't just, a pottery. This isn't just,
This is a part of
stone tool.
somebody's heritage. This is
Exactly.
part of their history. This
Exactly.
is who they are.
Yeah. And I'm simply here to learn from them, right? And to learn from the past, but also just to learn. And so it's it's just it's just wonderful. And I actually hope, the other thing is, hope to get inspired, continue to kind of teach and actually be inspired by the Laurier students. It's just so rewarding.
Yeah, they're good students. And that's
Yeah.
it. That's a good note to end on.
Okay.
Is your enthusiasm about the Laurier students.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me here today, Elaine.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
My thanks to Elaine Cheng for joining me today, and I hope you will join me again for more conversations that celebrate exceptional teaching practices, explore diverse teaching philosophies, and discuss the future of higher education teaching and learning.